yeah.
You studied hard for your cardiology
No.
test today? Not enough? Is there a lot of content that you have to memorize?
Yes.
Oh, but you all did well on your midterm exam for research design,
Thank you.
right? Great job. So with all the reading of the articles, I think that you have a little bit of a better idea about different studies, how to appraise them. Today, this class is to introduce you about the different methodologies or design that we can use to test our hypothesis. And this is very relevant to the projects that you will be doing. And so we will go over the research designs today, and then at 9 o'clock, Ms. Amy Casey will be coming in to talk about how to do an ILB application. And that's really very important for you because most of you will be doing an ILB application to really initiate your project. And many times during the past years, we had difficulties with the ILB application in that it took such a long time for you to get it approved, because unless it is approved, you cannot start your project. So in the fall, when we start the fall quarter, what our goal is that this year you will be really able to start your project in the fall immediately and not be hindered by not having the ILB approved yet. So after our ILB presentation today, next week, we will start with starting up your research proposal and also start with the ILB application in class so that everything is pretty much done in the summer and you can wait for your approval to come in at the beginning of the fall. So that's a little bit of a different way that we will be doing this year so that you can really start your project in the fall as planned. So with this, this class, usually Ms. Withers is giving this class on research design, but since she's really wrapping up her PhD thesis and is a little bit tight in schedule, I'm giving her slides pretty much on behalf of her. And I made it such that I reduced because she gave me about 60 slides, and I thought, how can I reduce it to make it really relevant to your projects and make it as informative as possible. And I was able to reduce it to 3 slides. So we are going over the research design in three slides, but what I would like you to do is probably sit with your group members, because based on the research design that we are doing, we are going to match your project to the design that we have available. And this pyramid, we went over it now multiple times, right? So we had it in our first class, and then Ms. Tamaris talked about this pyramid, and we're going over the level of evidence. And now you know the difference between systematic reviews and narrative reviews, correct? Because most of you had it correct, right? You were able to elaborate the difference between systematic reviews and narrative reviews. So, Trisha Boto. Is Trisha here?
No, she's not here.
She's not here. Sabine, can you write down? Trisha Boto not here today?
Oh, she told me she was sick yesterday, so maybe.
Yeah, you can just write it down, and perhaps I will receive something later on. Just help me with writing down. Okay. Then how about Hira? Yes. Can you tell us again? It's just a review. You all know already, but can you review the difference between a systematic review and a narrative review?
I forgot.
You forgot that was. You. Okay, so the systematic review is really at the top, right? And systematic review is different from narrative reviews in that we gather multiple clinical trials, randomized controlled trials that have been performed on that topic and compare all the data together. We compile multiple clinical trials and gather the data so that it encompasses much more data, is more comprehensive. We look at the bias of these different trials and try to come up with a more comprehensive analysis. And that's why the systematic review or the meta-analysis is at the top. A narrative review is it compiles different studies as well, but there is a lot of input from the author, and the bias or the subjectivity of the author is in that narrative review, so that many times in narrative reviews there is a little bit of subjectivity included. So that's the main difference, and you all knew that based on the midterm exam that you submitted. What is a critical appraised topic? Many times this one, it does not compile all the articles together, it just selects one article and just tries to appraise that article and critically evaluate that topic, and based on that appraisal comes to a conclusion. So everything that you see on the upper level on the top is filtered information. It goes through a filtration process. And then we have our randomized controlled trials, cohort studies, case control studies, background information, expert opinion, which are a little bit in the lower end. And when we look at the different study designs that we have descriptive ones. So a case report, where somebody describes a case that he has been or experience that he had by treating a patient, taking photographs or making the notes, and just gives a case report on that specific patient. A case series is something that compiles a number of patients and looks at the patient's responses over time. So those are case series. And then we have surveys. And many of us will be doing this kind of descriptive study where we will be distributing surveys. And then we have analytic methods where we either observe or actually do an experimental study. Observational studies can be divided into cross-sectional, case control studies, and cohort studies. And experimental, those are the randomized controlled clinical trials. So let's look at the different research designs. And the first question that we have to ask is, do we change the condition under the study? Either yes or no, correct? So if we change the condition of the study, that would fall into experimental studies. If we don't change anything and just observe what has happened, that would be an observational study. And if we go into the observational studies, what did I tell you about the observational studies? How many different study designs do we have? Huh? We had 3 different study designs for observational. One was cross-sectional, correct, and then cohort,
And then
case-controlled studies. Perfect. So we have 3 types of designs in the observational category. And then we have to ask ourselves, when we do the observations, do we make observations just once or multiple times? And if we do it multiple times, then it becomes a cohort study. When we evaluate a different study group at baseline, at 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, so that would be an observational cohort study. And if we make an observation just once, then it is either a case control study, and when we know the status of the patient, it becomes a case control study, and if we don't know the status of the disease of the patient, it becomes a cross-sectional study. So there are 3 different study designs that we have in our observational study. And for experimental studies, we have our randomized controlled trials. And for that one, we know that there is a control group. If there is no control group, what would be a trial without a control group? And this was a question that we also had during our case survey that was distributed at the beginning. When we compare a product or an experimental product, what should we compare it to? A golden standard, right? Or a control standard group. So that would be a true experiment. If we don't have a control group, or if we don't have a golden standard group, that would be a quasi-experiment or just a pilot study, we would call it. So there are 2 types of clinical trials. It can be a true experiment using a control group, or just a pilot study to just probe into the efficacy or safety of that product. That would be then a pilot or quasi-experiment. So with these different types of studies listed on the slide, what I would like you to do is I'm going to call out the groups that we have and discuss a little bit about the project and tell us what type of research design would fit in best to carry out your project. So let's start with our first group. And I would like the members to come to the front. It's Christian, Kevin, Noah, and Brian. Can we all come to the front? This is a great class. You also get an applause for coming to the front. Okay.
And Noe?
So you're working with Ms. Armstrong, right?
Yeah.
And you scheduled a meeting already. Did you meet with Ms. Armstrong?
No, so she hasn't been here, unfortunately, due to health reasons.
Uh-huh.
So she's been MIA. But I did talk to her once, and she wants us to focus on the research she wants us to do is based on taking blood pressure in noisy environments versus quiet environments.
You can take this.
I think I'm pretty loud.
And you
Yeah.
but this is the morning, so you have to really wake us up.
Wake them up.
Okay, so the research that she wants us to focus on is taking blood pressure in noisy environments
Okay.
versus quiet environments. And that's all we've talked about so far.
Did she give you an update that this was done previously?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you're going to follow up on a project that has been done, right?
I believe so.
Uh-huh. What was the result of the previous project that has been done? Comparing blood pressure taking in a noisy level and a quiet level.
That when it's in a quiet level, it's more accurate than when it's in a noisy level.
How do you know that it is accurate or not?
Based on research, I suppose.
Wasn't it that there was a difference in blood pressure
Hmm.
taken in a noisy and quiet level, and that the ones that were taken in a noisy level were a little bit higher?
Yeah. That's what I meant.
That's what you meant? Okay, good. So, based on this, this will be a clinical trial, correct?
Correct.
And what will be your subjects? How many subjects will you be recruiting? It
I wanna
needs to
say-
be determined.
Yes, TBD.
But I think, I don't know, I thought maybe 50. Here you go.
50?
50 is a good number for test subjects.
50 is just a good number.
Speaking the microphone.
What, what do we base our sample size on when we do studies? Hmm?
It has to be big enough, not too little, but it has to be big enough.
Yes,
So you
but you have to really know that big enough is a pretty generalized statement. If you can do a project with 30 subjects, right, you don't need to recruit 40, 50, 60 subjects. So our sample size is based on a sample size calculation, looking at the power of the study. Did you do the sample size calculation with Dr. Oyoyo? Yet? Not yet? So you will have to talk to Dr. Oyoyo about how many subjects should be recruited, because what you will do is you will use the same subjects, right? Let's say 40 subjects, because we are about 38 students here, right? The subjects that you can recruit is easy when you use your classmates, right? But then you will measure the blood pressure in a noisy environment of the 38 subjects, and then 1 week later you will use a quiet environment, right? Is that your...
Yeah.
That's
Pretty
smart.
much that's the design. And then you will have to think about the advantages, disadvantages, the strength and limitation of this type of study that you're doing. Okay? And since this project was done previously, you already have data, and the sample size calculation will be much easier. And that study had really good strength, but major limitations as well. So this time, when you repeat this study, you really have to overcome the limitations by tweaking and changing a little bit the design. Okay? So based on this, where are you in research design?
Where we are.
Left and right. True experiment? I guess true experiment.
Okay. Can I have the mic back?
Yeah. Over.
Okay. So
Same rule.
when you write up your proposal, when we start up writing your proposal, all of you have to tell me, or it has to be written in your proposal, what type of research design you're employing. Okay, so this is really to prompt you to think about the research design that you're doing and also be able to write up, include it in your proposal. Okay, good. Let's give a big applause to group number 1. I like it because all, I see attendance, 100% attendance for group 1. And they talk to their mentor, they pretty much know what their project will be about. Okay, let's go to project number 2, Miss Hayden's group, and then you have to, I have to apologize if I don't get it correct. Naveen. Okay, sorry. Sandra, Madeline, Rachel, and Catalina. And I have 5 students who is not here.
Rachel.
Rachel. Okay, so let me give you talk to your mentor, right?
Yes.
And you have an idea, a great idea, I've heard. Can you let us know what it is about and what type of design it will be? Okay.
I can tell you what it's about. Someone else can talk about the design.
Okay.
We're studying the therapeutic uses of Botox in the dental field for like trismus, bruxism, hypersalivation, dysphagia,
And patients with special needs. Yeah. And the type of study.
Well, this topic is pretty fresh. I would say like under 5 years. Last we talked with Ms. Hayton is we're looking more into it. So involving the design, we looked online that there are 88 courses on this subject matter. So we're in the process of reaching out to the people that are hosting this this course to see what their main focus on in their lecture and their database. So we're still working on the design, but as of now, we are looking into which aspect of Botox would be beneficial for us as hygienists to either informing, maybe sometime in the future performing the injections, but really focus on like what could be our part as dental hygienists in involving Botox in treating our patients.
So the first group had a very specific research question, which was how does environment, saying whether it's noisy or a quiet, and then you will know the definition of a noisy environment and a quiet environment, but how does environment change blood pressure level? So it's very specific, and since it's very specific, you can really design a project that addresses this specific question. Group 2, you have a great idea, right? You're looking at the therapeutic use of Botox, but what I would like to suggest, come up with a more specific question. So the question might be, I'm just throwing out ideas, is Botox, does Botox injection help in relieving TMJ pain, right? Then, based on this specific question, you will have to design. It might be, what is the perception of the use of Botox in the dental clinic for dental hygienists, right? If you have this kind of a specific question, then you know, I will have to distribute surveys to dental hygienists or students and faculty or practicing hygienists to look at the perception, how dental hygienists perceive really providing Botox treatment. Or you could think, how do patients perceive Botox treatment from dental hygienists as a provider? So there are many specific questions that you can have on this very specific topic. You just have to make clear what your direction will be, because based on that question, you have to come up with the design that best addresses your question. Okay, and that's something that you will think about this week, so that next week when we start our write-up, you know your specific research question, and you will be able to write up your aims and what type of design you will employ. Okay, good. And that brings us to group 3, Miss Marshall's group, Ariana, Adrian, Jessica, Megan, and Paula. Okay, I love it, full attendance. Okay, yeah, of course. Okay, can you tell me about your topic and what type of research question and design you will be employing?
Well, actually, our topic from Ms. Marshall was faculty calibration. We don't really know too much about it because we haven't been able to meet with her.
Okay.
And also, like, we're in the midst of like switching topics. Like, she knows that we're kind of thinking of doing something else that is possibly more applicable in clinic than, you know. But for faculty calibration, we feel like the type of study that would be is a cross-sectional study, because we're looking at, I guess, like past data and like comparing, you know, like comparing things like student scores, things like that, depending on how each professor scores.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's all we know for now.
Okay, when you collect data, an important aspect is the data collection prospective. Okay, you decide to collect data and do it prospectively, or there's also retrospective data collection. Most of the faculty calibration data is already there, right? So you're just evaluating the data that has been collected previously. That would be a little bit of a retrospective data collection design, okay? So since you're still really looking at your topic, it's very important for you to get this topic pretty much determined this week. Because next week we will be writing up the project, the proposal, so make sure you communicate and with Ms. Marshall so that you know what type of project you will be doing. Okay, great. And our fourth group is Ms. Withers' group, Sabine, Denon, Trisha, Albert, and Sarah. So we are missing Trish and Sarah. Okay.
Trish, get up here.
Okay, Albert, you have the mic, so
Yes.
you're going to explain, right?
Okay,
Okay.
so, you guys correct me. So, we are doing a blended learning experiment on the incoming class. And what we are looking at is to do an experiment to see if a video, an instructional video prior to radiology lab will improve their radiology scores for diagnostics. So we're going to make a video and we're going to implement the video right before lab to see if there is an outcome, a positive net outcome on video learning versus standard instruction.
What will be your study design?
Some sort of blind experiment, but we haven't honed in on which one we're going to do. But it's definitely going to be blind. The students are not going to know that they're being experimented.
We're going to try to do, when we pick the littles, we're going to try to ask them, well, also we're going to implement if they have previous dental experience to see if that's beneficial to them as well, if they have an advantage taking x-rays versus students who don't. So we're going to include a survey when we ask the littles questions to match them up.
And then will the instructional video be given to everybody in
No.
that class?
It'll be a randomized selection.
Yeah.
About half the class will receive the video and half the class won't.
Half of the class will not, and half of the class will receive. You said that the students will be blinded to the experiment.
Well, they're not going to know that they're being, they're not going to know that they're
But they have an advantage.
Yeah, that they're being experimented on.
Or that they're research
So I guess
subjects.
it's not totally a blind experiment, but they
And
don't
that's
know
and that's very good that we have having this conversation, because Amy Casey will be coming in today, and I would like to ask you to ask her that question, because if you're doing a study like this in classrooms, many times it's okay, but if you would like to publish the results, you have to make sure that this is IRB approved. And when you recruit patients or subjects, although those are your classmates, then the subjects cannot be blinded. They have to know that they are participating in this type of experiment, and they have to be willing and provide a consent that they are fine with participating, right? So you have to, this will be a very good question to ask Amy when she comes in, whether how you should do ILB approval based on your project today. Okay?
Yeah.
Anything else?
We were also thinking about to prevent any kind of harm to the students. We were the subject, we were going to do so that the students that were being treated with the video, the next week they would not be treated with the video, and the remaining students would be treated with the video, just to eliminate any kind of thing. But we're still debating that.
But then you're going to test them, right?
Yeah, we're going to grade their first lab results.
And then the second one where you switch, right? They are exposed to that exam already, right?
Yes.
So you will have to find out how you're going to manage that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. We had a question?
Oh, I was wondering, because I know you guys are looking at the incoming hygiene class, is it possibly open to the dental students as well? That way you have a bigger pool?
Dental students don't take radiology their first year.
Or, well, when do they take it?
Need 2 years.
Could you use them or no?
We're trying to keep it kind of.
We could use that, but the thing is
Withers
we
doesn't do it
we
yet.
don't know we won't know how to implement that into our protocols.
And we have the
We want to keep
advantage,
it controlled, selected to dental hygiene students.
Oh, okay.
and Miss Withers teaches the radiology class for hygiene, so we have that advantage of being able to do that. So I don't know that we'll be able to do that for the dental students.
Yes. Make sure you ask that question, because it's done in the classroom setting, which gives you an advantage, right? But including some type of study into a classroom that will be published data, you will have to ask. Okay?
Okay.
Perfect. Very good. And then we have our three groups: Daniel, Jessica, Monina, Eileen, and Christina.
I'm gonna give you the mic.
Was. Today's the 29th, yeah.
Okay, can you tell me about your project and what your research question is, what type of design you will be employing?
So our research project is DIY remedies for dry mouth. Some of our subjects might be the elderly, cancers, people who have cancer and radiation. We plan on doing an actual true experiment to actually go out and test different remedies. So some of, I think, what do we have?
Don't worry, Christian, I got you. So basically, since we're doing a true experiment, we're going to be comparing our DIY remedies to the only product that's out there right now, Biotene. That's going to be our kind of golden standard, kind of. Because if our product or whatever we make can compare to Biotene, then we know that it is effective. And so our ingredients right now are probably xylitol or I think you mentioned green tea, maybe? Tea.
Is there anything you would like to add?
So, do-it-yourself, it's not a product, do-it-yourself alternative agents is a very big topic in oral health care. Not only for treating dry mouth, but for whitening, for getting rid of malodor. So there are many do-it-yourself remedies on the market or on the website.
Yeah.
So you really have to search for natural remedies that have been used in the past and are currently promoted to relieve dry mouth, right? But then another more important aspect is dry mouth can be caused by several reasons. So just obstruction or disease of salivary glands that reduces saliva secretion is big, right? So anything that could potentially activate salivary gland secretion, such as fruits, lemons, would be helpful. But then there are other causes of dry mouth that are not associated really with saliva secretion. It's just that the mouth is dry. Then you would have to look at remedies that are helpful in coating, in lubricating the whole mouth. So you have to do a lot of literature review, looking on websites on what is promoted. And it's good that you go and say that you would like to do a true experimental study and test it out on subjects, but that's very time consuming. Number one, you will have a problem probably recruiting enough people that say that they have dry mouth. So you have to really think and talk with your mentor, get together with your mentor, schedule something and brainstorm so that you really know what you would like to do and what type of design you will employ that is also feasible to do. Okay, you can plan a big study, but if it's not feasible within the fall, then it might be challenging. Okay, so talk to your mentor and keep brainstorming. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then we have Miss Lennon's group: Selena, Heidi, Hannah, Jessica, and Hillary.
Okay.
Because there will be so many presentations going on. It's really, it's okay.
Okay, so for our experiment, we're kind of going off of what a previous experiment was, I think in 2017. A class did swabbing of the old keyboards that we had in our old clinic with the deep crevices versus the new pure keys. And they did a comparative study for that. But for us, we're going to do dental versus dental hygiene. So we're going to check like aseptic techniques and kind of do like a swabbing before and after, that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I think it's going to be a true experiment. Yeah.
But so the disinfection study has been, it's the third year that you're doing it. So we had a previous study, this and another study, and this will be the third year that we are doing it because the keyboards are changing, the swabbing protocol are changing. We had a one swipe, then we had a second, but 2 times swipe, so it's a good project. What I would recommend though is that Ms. Lennon and your group also talk to the lab, because our lab staff that has been working together to work on the microbiology part has retired. And I'm not sure who will be continuing with this type of project, helping out our students this year. Okay, so you have to alert Ms. Lennon to talk to our lab first, whether this is feasible. Okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then our 7th group is Miss Lee's group, Kayla, Adele, Sunshine, and Tiffany.
Well, we talked about it.
Okay.
Hi. So our research topic is based on a previously done study to determine whether OHI needs to be tailored for the elderly. We're deciding to do a little bit more in-depth study of that, a cross-sectional study to determine whether OHI needs to be tailored not just for the elderly, but with other demographics such as race and education level. The end.
The end? Okay. So last year we had a project that evaluated the knowledge and oral health related quality of life of older adults 65 years and above. And what we noticed when distributing the survey is that older adults, when we call them elderly, didn't really like it. So we don't use the term elderly anymore. So everything is an older adults 65 years and above. Okay? So we did a project and looked at their knowledge and how they perceive oral health related quality of life. What we found is that the knowledge, there was a big difference in knowledge among different ethnicities. So we had our Caucasian population, our Hispanic, Asian, and other population, and what we found that the Hispanic population was 5 times more likely to be classified into a category of having poor oral health knowledge, which is, there is already literature that has shown that, which is associated with educational level as well, but we really wanted to look at it in our San Bernardino community, in our local community. And then this group, since we have the data from last year about the knowledge was a survey that we distributed with 23 questions. And we have data on what was the lack of knowledge in this category, in this category, in this category. I think your group will be looking at the data of this previous project and see what knowledge was missed by most of our older adults, especially the Hispanic population, whether there was a difference in this knowledge. Perhaps they were knowledgeable about this, while not knowledgeable about this. So you're going to dig more into the data, and then based on that data, we'll create some kind of oral health knowledge pamphlet that might help in improving oral health in a certain ethnicity or just older adults in general. I think that's what you are going to, what your group will be going into, but you still have to work out what will be specifically. I think you have your main direction, but the question has to be formulated and what type of instructional pamphlet you will create and how you will test whether this is really working or whether this is adequate.
Can we do an experiment to see the specific things that they need work on to show that we would use that in our pamphlet? Like, would that be an experiment, or would that be like a, I don't know where we would go with that? We still need a meeting.
I think you, based on the data that has been collected on knowledge, you will focus your instructional pamphlet on improving the lack of knowledge in this type
ethnicity
of category to really improve it. And you can discuss with your mentor a little bit further. Okay? Perfect. Okay, we are here for our last group. Group number 9, Lucille, Miriam, John, Laura, and Emily.
Bless you.
Thank you. Okay, Lucille.
Okay. Our group is
Who's missing?
Miriam.
Miriam.
Our group is discussing, we're taking, having some dental students that have taken, that have done a debate between, on a certain topic, let's say fluoride, or I believe the topic was fluoride. And they have a dental teachers, they have different interprofessional degrees, as well as some, say, PhD students assessing and seeing whether they have adequate information about the topic. And the question is whether we can have, is it safe to have other teachers from other interprofessional careers assessing our dental and dental hygiene students, and is their assessment valid, or should they have some kind of knowledge of dental information in order to assess our students? So it's more of a statistical analysis. So the study has already been done, so we have to do the statistical analysis and figure out whether it's good or not. And it's, I would say, not rigged, but it's more like of a basis of a future continuing study, you know, in that. And so because it's focusing on one class, and that could be, it could be different with other different professions, but it's a start in a process of research.
Also, pretty much the focus of the research is going to be how can we assure that the interprofessional educators that are coming over to the school are capable of testing us. Mm-hmm. Why can we not know that we are good or not? Why do someone has to come from somewhere to test us? And if they come, are they capable of testing us, of making sure that we know? Mm-hmm. And then how someone from another from another like career can test a dental or a hygiene student. Like sometimes in the past we were talking people coming from the nursing program, or that's their major, but they are capable of testing us in something. How can we know that they are? So that's pretty much the way we are going.
Yes.
Also, it's following because accreditation is coming soon for the school of the whole dental school by the time we leave in October 2020. So we're trying to improve so that we have just better standards in our accreditation.
Yes. It's a very important topic, and it's really retrospective data collection because all the interprofessional educators and faculty have been assessing already. So you are going to collect retrospectively what scores that they have been using, and there must be somebody, a golden standard that they are comparing the scores to. Okay, perfect, very good.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I hope that this has prompted you to really talk with your mentors to discuss your research design a little bit further before we start up writing the projects next week. And we'll get a little break, about 10 minutes, and then I think Ms. Amy Casey will be here to talk about our ILB application. I would like you to really ask questions that will help you and is relevant to your project and will help you to really get more efficient and proficient in your IRB application, okay? So we'll take a 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Good, hurry up.
I'd like something like, okay, we're
Is it five, like, is Christina gonna find five different ones? And
No, you do it as a project together, but you submit individually, okay, so that it is on canvas. You do it all together.
Looking promising. Just brainstorm.
Let's talk about this after class today.
Okay, have a midterm. Yeah, I'll start. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Today would be a good day. After your exam.
What time did
After.
Is that okay? Yeah, we'll I know where your office is.
You know, you will bring the crowd.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. 5 o'clock. That's good.
Basically, we're good. Okay, thank you, Doctor.
I love to, yeah.
Does this advance it too, or just?
No, it is actually. Yes.
No problem.
I
It doesn't work? It's okay. No problem. Good, how are you doing? Good. Very busy. Yeah. Has it been a year since I've done this? Exactly. It's only a year. Seems similar. Flown by.
Yes, and all we have 8 groups of us here. And it's like all improve to the application.
Yeah, we have to find something else that's like. And this is the hygiene group, right? Yeah, more perfect. Wonderful.
Are you going to explain the financial interest and
Yes, and the education. Yes, you're most perfect. So I was like, I want to send that email, but I just like, don't want to like
training, all of them with the CITI, with the clinical cases, that's requirement now.
Good.
Yes. They have done this, but they have not done the conflict
Okay.
of interest.
I will do that. Okay.
That's great.
Perfect. Excellent. I'm glad they've done the human centered.
Yeah, I had a question. With another project that we're going to do with students, I would like to distribute the survey to our students,
Okay.
but also to the school in Korea.
Okay.
This scholar from Korea, so we are going to collaborate together.
Okay.
How do we go about IRB application if we use outside institution in Korea?
So we have to see what their IRB regulations are. Most likely their institution would defer to our IRB, or we may defer to their IRB. It all depends on the regulations. So when you submit it, I'll take a look, but it's pretty, because it's a minimal risk study, it's a pretty seamless process, but normally it's either we will be the reviewing IRB for both sites, or we may just defer to them for their site.
Okay.
So,
Because what we will do is create a survey in English and then do the same in Korean, and we would like to just give it to our IRB to say that it is okay, but then you would have to check.
yeah, so most likely what'll happen is we'll just ask for like a letter of support from your institution saying that it's okay. Yeah, saying that it's okay for you to distribute the surveys, and usually that will be enough because it's a low risk. So we'll kind of see. It all depends on the types of questions you're asking. Yeah. But as long as the questions are pretty benign and not too sensitive in nature, then
It's about perception.
Okay. It should be fine. So most likely we can just say, do we have your permission to survey your students? And they'll either say yes, or they'll say, well, our IRB needs to look at it, or we'll defer.
So a letter of support from the dean of that.
Yeah, that would be great. Absolutely. We've tried quite a few things like that. So it really depends on the situation and it depends on the history. So, okay.
You know that Why is that?
I tried to say a little bit more, but I don't know. Yeah. I do want to go.
Or do we all should we try and get articles like this for our we'll do the articles. Find something.
I think it's about all the organization. Here.
Do you have one by your bed, like?
Yeah, one of these and my dad's. The other one's further away from it. I don't know what it's
Now this makes sense. I gave it 10 minutes of a break.
Huh? I don't have anything else.
That was a weird idea. Right after this, we'll go to the...
And the dentist, they're all required to do research, right? No.
Our dental hygiene students are required. Dental
Right.
But then, decided that it should be elective. It's the chair really decides why they want to that's why I can say we will have paid for sure.
Then you're gonna be having iPhones and glasses.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's
No.
Not that I want more work, but I just
Nothing. It's in my wallet. This is one I never take out.
our numbers and right now it's just everything's been down even more. We're not really sure why. But everything is so the amount of funding is down, the number of students is down, people that have it down, everything's down. So anything we can do to spur it up. Yeah. So you guys are all working, so we're strategizing, trying to figure out one, what the root cause is. No, it's been pretty abrupt. So we're really trying to figure out why.
Are you going home this weekend? I don't know.
Nobody wants it then.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't care about
Need a start.
Yeah. If we got, well, because
Okay, good morning. I'm going to try to stop the mic because I think you guys can probably hear me back there. Yes? Yes? We'll wait for a few more. Okay, good morning. I'm Amy Casey. I'm the Director of Human Research and Compliance here at Loma Linda University Health, and I'm also the administrator of our Institutional Review Board, or IRB. I gave this presentation about a year ago, and at that time I wasn't director, I was just IRB administrator, and I asked the group, has anyone worked with an IRB? Anyone know of an IRB? And one gentleman rose his hand and he says, yes, my dad's an IRB administrator and everybody hates him. And I thought, great, this is the great way to start off this presentation. So, does anyone have any experience working with an IRB whatsoever? Does anyone even know what an IRB is? No? No? Review, yeah, it's the Institutional Review Board. Does anyone know what it does?
Reviews things.
Reviews things.
A board
We do
that
review
reviews
things.
things.
So we're starting from baseline, ground level, and the good thing is that all of you are going to have experience submitting things through my office. So you be nice to me, I'll be nice to you.
Please be nice.
So, what is the IRB? The IRB is a committee that ensures adherence to all federal, state, local, and institutional regulations concerning the protection of human subjects in research. So we're responsible for the application of not only institutional policies, but ethical philosophy, state regulations concerning human subject research, and federal regulations. And these federal regulations are brought to us by the FDA and OHRP. So basically, we're an ethics review committee. We don't normally review the scientific validity. Usually the chairs of each department sign off on an IRB application before it gets submitted to us, saying, yes, this is scientifically valid. And so we're really looking, is this safe to do? Is this ethical to do? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? The role of the IRB. So, a lot of people on campus think we're just a bunch of nitpicky people, and that's all we do during our committee is just nitpick everybody. Some IRB members think they're angels and gods, and we can control all research, human subject research across campus. And that's, I think, maybe a mixture of the two, but we are definitely nitpicky, but there's reasons for that. So, who is on the IRB? So the IRB must be made up of at least 5 members. We actually have 13 full-time members and we have 10 alternate members. And we have a very diverse membership. There has to be a non-affiliated member or a community member, and we have a pastor out of Yucaipa, and then we have a school teacher who serves as our community member. We have to have a scientific member, which we have a whole plethora of on our committee, and then we have to have non-scientific members as well. So I serve as a member. I am not a scientist. I don't claim to be a scientist. I serve as one non-scientific member. We have an ethicist on our committee. We have nurses. We have respiratory therapists. We have 8 physicians. We have 2 dentists. So we really have the whole gamut of people from different specialties looking and reviewing the applications. Because we do FDA-regulated studies here on our campus, a physician is required to be present anytime we do review an FDA-regulated study. Any questions about that? So, why is an IRB necessary? So, during World War II, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but during the Holocaust and in concentration camps, there were medical experiments done by Nazi physicians. And the physicians would say, we have this captive audience, basically, let's just do things to them and see what happens. So they had thousands of concentration camp prisoners. People couldn't say no, and they just said, let's see what happens if we just inject people with live viruses, or if we inject them with gasoline, both injected or into their blood. Or what happens to someone if you just immerse them in ice water? How long can they actually live? Or how long will it take for someone to die if they ingest certain kinds of poisons? So this is, I mean, they weren't giving their consent to do this. There was no option. So this led to the Nuremberg trials between 1946 and 1947. And post-World War II trials of 23 Nazi doctors, 16 doctors were found guilty and 7 received the death penalty. And this led to the Nuremberg Code, which was the first code. And if you look, it's in the 1940s. So, I mean, yes, it's quite a long time ago, but not too long ago, that not only the United States, but anywhere in the world, there was no regulations on human subject research. So the Nuremberg Code led to the main philosophy that voluntary consent is absolutely essential. So anytime you're doing human subject research, you absolutely need to have informed consent. Again, This was the Tuskegee syphilis study, 1932 to 1972. Has anyone heard of this study before? A few people? So this one, when I first started with the IRB, this one surprised me because I read all these horrible things about this study, but then if you look at the very top here, it was started by the US government. They actually started this study in 1932. So they recruited 600 black men from the poorest counties in Alabama. Of the 600, 399 had already had syphilis and 200 were free from the disease. The purpose of the study was to see how the disease naturally progressed without treatment. So they were looking at those that didn't have it, looking at those that did, and just see what their longevity and their life looked like. Participants were told that they would be given burial insurance, which is important if you're poor, meals, and medical care for their participation. So these people said, okay, why not? They're just going to look and, I already have this disease or I don't have this disease. They're just going to look and see what happens to me. If you look, in 1940, so 8 years after this study started, penicillin was found to be an effective treatment of syphilis. Do you think the people who had syphilis were told that there was a treatment or were given the treatment? No, unfortunately not. So they ended up living with syphilis, a lot of them died, and the study continued from 1940 to 1972, even though there was treatment available. And they were still not necessarily told that they had syphilis or what they were suffering from. They were told they had bad blood. So they didn't even really know when the treatments did come out what they really had. So there was a lot of misinformation given to these subjects. So in 1974, the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research was started, and they commissioned the publication of the Belmont Report in 1979. And the Belmont Report is basically the basis of human subjects protections. And the Department of Human Health and Services and the FDA published regulations based on this Belmont Report in 1981, and this is called the Common Rule. The Common Rule remained unchanged until January of this year, where there was a few changes, minor changes, and this is basically why we do what we do. We're here to make sure that the people who are voluntarily giving consent for these studies are protected. So the Belmont Report, it governs all research supported by the U.S. government. The ethical principles outlined in the report are the basis for subsequent regulations, as I said. There's 3 basic principles for the Belmont Report: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. Respect for persons. This is to treat individuals as autonomous agents. Do not use people as a means to an end. Allow people to choose for themselves. And provide extra protections to those with diminished autonomy. So if you're doing prisoner research, research with children, or cognitively impaired, there's a certain special set of guidelines that researchers and IRBs must follow before research can be approved. Beneficence. The 2 general rules formulated from the principle of beneficence are: first, do no harm; second, maximize possible benefits and minimize risks. Questions about that? Justice. Treat people fairly. Fair sharing of burdens and benefits of the research. So in that Tuskegee study, they focused on one little group in Alabama. One of their biggest problems is they didn't actually, there was a lot of problems, but one of it is they just focused on one little community, and they should have really expanded it a bit more among other things. But they were really focusing on one group because they thought they weren't going to understand the study, and they were putting all the burden on one particular group. An injustice occurs when benefits to which a person is entitled are denied without good reason, like treatment for syphilis was denied and there was no good reason, or when burdens are imposed unduly. So rules derived from the Belmont Report: under respect, we have the informed consent process and respect for privacy. For beneficence, good research design, competent investigators and researchers. That's why we ask you to do some of the training that I know you all loved doing through City. And favorable risk-benefit analysis. As an IRB, we're always looking, is there a favorable risk-benefit? Do the risks, or do the benefits outweigh the risks? and then justice, equitable selection of subjects. Okay, pay attention to this because I'm going to quiz you in a second. What is human subject research? So, this seems like it should be simple, but it's not. Every single week, I have at least 5 different requests. Amy, is this human subject research? Just got one this morning. We're also the IRB of record for White Memorial in LA, and one of their nurses sent me and said, Amy, is this human subject research? So when I get back to the office, I get to review that. And it's not as easy as it seems. So in order for the IRB to have any governing control, it has to meet the definition of human subject research. So research, by our definition, is a systematic investigation, including research development, testing, and evaluation, designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. And, not an or, but definitely an and, it has to involve a human subject, a living individual about whom an investigator conducting research obtains data through intervention or interaction with the individual, or identifiable private information or biospecimens. Biospecimens was just added to this definition in January of this year. Any questions? Do you guys have that down? Yes?
What's considered biospecimens?
Blood, tissue, anything that comes out of your body could be considered a biospecimen. Okay. Scenario 1, is it human subject research? A physician plans to evaluate the aluminum content of nutritional solutions given to low birth weight infants. He planned to ask the pharmacy to notify him when a solution was prepared for infants under a certain weight. A small amount of the solution would be sent to a lab for examination to ascertain if the solution was within the daily recommended intake. Is it human subject research? How many say yes? Awesome. Who says no? It should be everyone. Who doesn't know? Anyone who says no, it's not human subject research. Do you want to see why?
No biospecimen.
Okay.
It's not being tested on anybody. They're just checking the
Wait.
It's just being observed.
Yeah.
Great. Those are awesome. Yes, you're right. So there is no real human subject. There is no data you're obtaining about an individual. They're obtaining data about the solution itself, right? So this is a scenario that I would get. This one's a little on the simpler side, but you'd be surprised how many people and physicians get this wrong. So this is the kind of questions that we get on a daily, weekly basis is what I'm doing human subject research. So when you guys are planning your projects, there's 3 levels of IRB review it can come under. There's full review, and that is usually a greater than minimal risk study, and this requires our convened IRB to review it. So the IRB meets every 2 weeks, and all of our members meet for anywhere from 30 minutes to 3.5 hours, depending on the length of the agenda, and we review studies the whole time. The expedited studies are still they're considered minimal risk studies, and these can be reviewed administratively. So that means we send them to designated members, and they just review them, and then our chair looks over it, and they get signed off. Exempt is a strange term because it doesn't mean it doesn't require IRB oversight, but only the IRB can determine whether a study is exempt, and we have to assign it to a particular exempt category. So the federal government actually has expedited categories or exempt categories that your study has to fall under. And exempt studies we take a look at, and then there's no continuing review for. So you don't have to update us in a year and tell us how many subjects you've enrolled or really how this study is doing. We just let you go on your merry way. Okay, any questions about the levels of review? So full review, like I said, these studies involve greater than minimal risk. These are like clinical trials involving investigational new drugs or investigational devices, and these studies do not meet an expedited category or a minimal risk category. Expedited reviews are minimal risk. These are retrospective chart reviews, a collection of blood samples. There's a certain amount that the federal government says this is okay for minimal risk. If you go over this amount of blood collection, either by volume or number of times, then it has to go to full board, or it's a greater than minimal risk study. Data collected solely for non-research purposes, or research employing surveys or focus groups. Please submit to the IRB before starting your study. Please, 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 please. We absolutely cannot give retrospective approval. 2 weeks ago, I had a student and her mentor submit a study application, and they said, we did this, and I said, wait, have you already done this study? Yes, 100 people enrolled. Thankfully, it was a survey, but guess who has to redo their whole entire study? Because we cannot say, yes, the study was great, application was perfect, but I can't go back and say, okay, I can approve it. It has to be done before. The IRB has to review and approve your study before. Any questions about that? So please don't get yourself in that situation.
So they had to redo the 100
Yep.
surveys,
Yep.
or they
Yep.
to the same people, or did they change?
So we're still working through that. So we're trying to decide. They can do the same. It depends on how the full. So this is a violation now also that is going back to the full IRB, and the full IRB is going to decide whether or not they have to consent everybody and then say, hey, we screwed up. But most likely they're going to have to go and review with different individuals. And then because this was an anonymous survey, they weren't going to be able to go back anyway. So please don't do anything on your study before you have IRB approval. Please, please, please. Submitting to the IRB. Submit your study using the correct application. On our website, we have clinical trial applications, archival retrospective applications, minimal risk studies, anonymous surveys, biospecimen research. If you fill out the correct application, it'll save you a ton of time. You don't have to spend a lot of time answering questions that aren't relevant to your research. If you have a question about which application to use, just call me, call one of my employees, and they will be more than happy to help you. And most typical submissions will require the complete application, a consent form if you're going to be consenting subjects. Sometimes you can request a waiver of consent or request a waiver of signed consent depending on the type of study you're doing. A protocol that's supporting your research and why you're doing what you're doing. And then your supporting documents. If you're going to have questionnaires, the IRB needs to review those. If you're going to advertise with flyers, we need to review that. If you're going to email subjects, we need to review that. Basically, anything the subject sees or anything you're going to be doing, the IRB needs to review and approve. So when preparing your submission to the IRB, use the templates on the website. We have consent templates, we have protocol templates, we have recruitment scripts. So they're there to help you, and if there's questions, again, just call us and let us know. We are in the middle of revamping our website. I'm the first to admit the website is horrible. I kind of inherited a mess, but within hopefully the next month, it's going to be revamped. Unfortunately, the web center here has 3 people for the whole entire institution working on the website, which I was surprised about. So it's a slow process, but if you look on our website today, and then when you go to submit 2 months from now or a month from now and things look entirely different, don't panic. You can either, hopefully you'll be able to find it, but if not, just give us a call. Okay, I was told everyone has completed their human subject education through City. Is that correct? How was that experience? Boring, long, right? The good news is it's good for 3 years. It used to be good for 2 years or 1 year, and it's a standardized thing. So if you were to go to another institution or do research somewhere else, most institutions accept the CITI program for human subject research education. The other thing you are going to have to do before you submit your study, conflict of interest disclosure and training. I will actually send you the link so we can do that. Conflict of interest training is also done through City, and your disclosure, you have to do that. By law, we are not allowed to even review your study until we know that there's no conflicts of interest. So, what can you expect once you submit the study to us? When it's submitted to us, I think most of you will most likely be doing minimal risk studies. I hope you will, and I'll tell you why in a second. So it'll go to basically an administrative body. As long as you've had your conflict of interest done and your education, it'll be sent out for review. And usually the review turnaround timeline is anywhere from 2 days to 10 days, 10 business days. And you'll get an email from us saying, wonderful, everything's approved, or these are the items that you need to work on in order for us to approve it. And some of the things may seem super picky, but I'll look at that, or we'll talk about that in a second. So once a study is approved, any changes must be submitted as an amendment. If you want to add new people on your study, you need to submit it and let us know so the IRB can clear them. Just because they've done their human subjects education doesn't mean they're cleared to be on the study. IRB has to approve every single person listed on that study. If you want to increase or decrease the number of increase the number of subjects, you need to submit an amendment. Or if you want to change something or add a questionnaire or even one question to your questionnaire, the IRB needs to review and approve that. Okay, common reasons for delays in IRB approval. As I mentioned before, the COI, or the Human Subjects Research Educate. Wow, I need to change that. There's an R instead of the N. I think it's the picture. Anyway, education requirements not complete. There's informed consent issues. If there's grammar and spelling issues, what does it say to subjects who are potentially signing up for a research study if your consent is spelled incorrectly? Sort of like my slide here. It doesn't give them a lot of confidence, right? You're wanting me to sign up, maybe do this experimental treatment, and you can't even spell a word. How do I know you're actually going to do the treatment correctly? How do I know you're going to protect my privacy? So a lot of it, one, you're representing your instructor, two, you're representing Loma Linda, but three, you're wanting to give the subject some level of confidence that you really know what you're doing. Sometimes the reading level is too high. It's completely technical. We've had some full board clinical trials where our pharmacist will let her 8th grade daughter read through the consent and say, do you understand what that said? And she says, no. Okay, we're redoing it. We're going to make this person redo it. Most of the people you're going to interact with, they're the lay person. They don't have a medical background. They don't have a scientific background. And usually we say if it's higher than an 8th grade level, then it's too complicated. You're missing required elements. There's elements in the informed consent that are required. You have to tell them what the alternatives are if they don't sign up for the study, what the risks are, what the benefits are, what the purpose of the study is. Who's being paid? Are they being paid? Is there any cost to them? So there's required elements. So a lot of times people will get their application back and will say, there's all these misspellings or these grammatical errors, please change, or you're missing this required element. And a lot of times it looks like we're just being that nitpicky IRB on that third slide there, but we're really not. Some of these things we have to do by law. We have to make sure you're including in your informed consent because we'll get in trouble if we miss it as well. Inconsistency across study documents is probably the biggest reason we send applications back. So your application may say that you're going to interview 20 subjects and your protocol says you're going to interview 30. Which is it, 20 or 30? Or it says you're going to have a questionnaire, but there's no questionnaire included. Make sure there's consistency across all your documents. People who are used to submitting do a great job at cutting and pasting, or maybe a horrible job at cutting and pasting, and we can tell that they've done that. So we want to make sure that everything really is consistent across, from the application to your protocol to the consent to the questionnaire. Research by students at LUH. You have to have the support of a faculty sponsor. No ifs, ands, or buts. Do not put your name down as, when you're filling out the application, which a lot of you will fill it out on your own, do not put yourself as the principal investigator. At Loma Linda, you absolutely have to be a faculty member in order to do that. You will put yourself as a sub-investigator below the principal investigator. So this applies to all projects that are being conducted for the purpose of a degree. You will sign off as a student. There is a place for you to sign on. But ultimately, it's your faculty who's responsible for the study. Any questions about that? Choose your project wisely. please consider things like time, cost, transportation by participants, and your study population. Your age of your population, are you going to need to have an assent form? So assent forms are like a consent form, and if you're enrolling subjects between the ages of 7 and 17, you have to have an assent form. So anyone between that age can say, no, I don't want to be a part of this study after you've told them about it. Even if their parents say yes, the kids can say no. They can just say no because it's Tuesday and they feel like saying no. But unfortunately, that's the way it goes. That kid is able to have a voice in what happens to them. So we had a application probably a month and a half ago from a dental student. Actually, it was an orthodontist, and they were looking at doing training through apps on Instagram and Facebook, and just kind of hygiene training when you have braces. Well, they wanted them to come in for 5 visits after they got their braces off at a different time point than when they would come back for retainer checks or that sort of thing. How probable is it that but people between the ages of 16 and 18 that they were looking at are going to come in for extra visits? And they weren't paying them. So that, we told them, you may want to look at this. Most likely you're not going to have a 16 to 18-year-old come in when they don't have to. And you're not providing them extra gas money as, you know, an incentive to come in. They really have no reason to come in. So you may want to relook at that. So we will kind of guide you. We had a resident who was trying to do a full-blown clinical trial in 6 months. And this is a study that would normally last 3.5 years. And we said, there's no way you're going to do this. Just trying to get this submitted to the FDA is going to take you 3.5 months, and you want this study done in 6 months. So just be realistic with your time. Look at how much time. Look at what the cost. Do they get any sort of funding?
Not for compensation.
Not for compensation, but just for the project itself.
Very generous support, $250.
Okay, very generous support of $250. So don't do things that cost, don't try and run samples that are going to cost $500 a sample. You don't have the money. So think within your budget, think within your time, and really look at your study population. We had one dental hygienist student who was trying to do a study on patients who were on ventilators in the hospital, and because a lot of people, when they have a vent in, their mouth gets kind of gnarly. So they're trying to figure out if there was anything that they could do either before the vent or while they're on the vent that would prevent any decay or cavities. And we said this is going to take some time and effort because there's nursing support you're going to have to use. They are not allowed to touch patients just by within scope of practice in the hospital. So there's a lot of things that you really need to think about, and if you have questions on whether or not it's even feasible, we have meetings with people all the time. Your faculty advisor should be able to help you, but if not, or if there's questions, just call us and we can let you know whether it can be done or not. We're not going to say no, it can't be done. We're going to say these are going to be our challenges, because ultimately we're here to support you and help support your research, and we want you to get this through and we want you to be successful, but we also want to be realistic about the challenges that you may face. Also, we have a high Spanish-speaking population. Think about whether or not you're going to have your consents translated to Spanish. You have to give subjects materials in a language that they understand. Pretty reasonable, makes sense, but a lot of people don't realize that. And that could be another cost. Communication with the IRB. Here's 2 email addresses. You really only need to look at the first one. We have people looking at our email all day long, every day, sometimes on weekends, unfortunately. And you will get some sort of response back, usually within a few hours. Avoid intercampus mail. We get a lot of, oh, we sent you our renewal through intercampus mail last week. Never received it. Now their study's expired. Just email us if you have questions. Call us, walk in, and be mindful of deadlines and meeting dates. We do have IRB every 2 weeks on a Wednesday, and usually our office is pretty empty, or we're trying to prepare for IRB, so people will come in or call and say no one's answering, and it's Wednesday afternoon and it's during an IRB meeting. Well, that's exactly why, because we're in an IRB meeting. Questions? That was a lot. and I talk fast, so any questions? Now's the time to ask. Anyone have questions regarding their research? Yes?
So once we quote unquote submit our research topic and it goes to our faculty and then they get a review, is that kind of like what we're doing the process to make sure that we're on the right track and we're not?
Yep.
Right? So it goes to our faculty member and then they make sure that it's.
Because they have to sign off on it. So
Okay.
you'll most likely complete everything, send it to your faculty member, and then they will submit it to us. Because they're gonna, they have to sign it, you have to sign it, the chair has to sign it before we accept it. Yes?
We were gonna do our experiment on the incoming class. Can we just include the consent form in the syllabus of the incoming class?
What are you wanting to do?
We're gonna implement like video aid to laboratory to lab simulations.
Okay.
To see how video instructional aid in the training of the lab.
So will it help change the course, or will it adjust the course? So what I'm trying to get at is this really an institutional course thing? And then is it not generalizable knowledge, which means it's really a QI project and it doesn't need human subject research review. It may not need IRB review. So if it's really if you're looking at improving a course and it's more educational and your results really aren't going to be published, but it may basically guide how you're going to teach the course later on, then it would be considered QI and it's not generalizable knowledge. So the IRB would have nothing to do with it.
But all of the projects, ultimately, whether it improves the course or not, we want to publish.
So you can still publish, but it would be QI. So just because you're publishing doesn't necessarily mean it has to have IRB approval. The thing is it really QI or is it research? And I will send you kind of a decision tree. Because if it's QI, I don't want to touch it. And we have no oversight over it.
Yes. And that's a tricky one when it's embedded in the course.
It's very tricky when it's embedded in the course.
And that's why we have our incoming class of perhaps 40 students. 20 students will be exposed to instructional video before they take the test, and 20, for example, just 20 subjects will not be exposed to the video, which is kind of instructional.
Yeah.
But we will discuss the project a little bit more in detail with the mentor, and then send.
Because you're randomizing, it's a little bit more towards the research end. If you were doing it across the board and comparing this year's incoming students to then last year's based on outcomes or results, that's probably going to be more of a QI because you're randomizing subjects or students into two different groups. It'd probably gear towards research. But these are the kinds of questions that come up all the time, and sometimes it takes just talking for a few minutes to really guide someone on the right path.
How do you ensure blindness with a consent form?
How do you ensure, so if you're consenting and one group is going to get this and one group is going to get that? It depends on the study. So the IRB allows something called deception. So you may end up having two separate consent forms. If everyone's going to have the same syllabus, then it may say you may be a part of this study. This is going to be a little bit tricky because it's in education and it may be exempt. But really you're just more, if you think giving them information is going to guide them in a certain direction, whether they're randomized or not, then we can say that we're just going to briefly mention the study to everybody, and then afterwards you would have to basically debrief all the students and let them know what has happened to them. Not really happened to them, but what they've been through. It's really hard not knowing exactly the specifics to guide you, but things can be done. Any other questions? Now's the time to ask them right here. Big sigh, don't be defeated.
And I think it's good that you give actually the presentation because they know whom to contact. If they have questions, because many times we as the faculty are not sure as well. So I think it's good that you know whom to contact. If you have questions about the ILB, to contact with after discussing with your mentor, to just give Amy an email.
Email is usually best. I'm
Email.
usually in meetings a lot, but I get back to you normally within the same day. Email me directly, and I'll give Dr. Kwan my email address. But I'm most likely going to be the one who's reviewing your projects and then sending it to the chair. So I'm right here. I take cash.
Great.
Yes. So if you have questions, if you don't want to talk about it right now or bring it up right now, that's fine. But just email me and say this is what I was thinking, and then if I need more information, I'll either let you know or we can set up a meeting. But I really try and make myself as accessible as possible to you, so that way it runs smoothly and you're not waiting weeks going back and forth trying to decide and figure out your project.
And I think it's good if you discuss with your mentors first so that you have a specific idea and you make a question that is really relevant to the project. Otherwise it's, oh, it might be this and this and this, and then everybody gets confused. So
Yes.
I think it's better for you to narrow down with your mentor about your project and then give that specific question so that you have also a better idea of what we are really proposing.
Yes. And keep it simple. Just keep your project simple. You're not trying to change the world with your one project here. You have your reasons you're wanting to do your project, but just keep it simple. You do not want it to spend weeks and weeks in the IRB because it's overly complicated, or there's too many questions, or we're not sure you're going to be able to do it. So just really try and keep it as simple as you can. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the link for the conflict.
Yes, I will make sure